Guess what? It's time for a prediction video. I know stuff. All right, it's time to do a college football 2025 season game-by-game prediction for the Tennessee Vols. Now, last year, I predicted Tennessee to go 10-2, miss the SEC championship game, and make the playoffs at 10-2. Tennessee went 10-2, they missed the SEC championship game, and they made the playoffs. Now, I did not get the two games exactly right. I had them losing to Georgia and I believe Alabama. They actually beat Alabama. They did lose to Georgia. And then they also lost on the road at Arkansas. So I got the record right, but I missed on one of the two losses. We'll see if we can improve on that accuracy rate this year for the 2025 prediction. Speaking of this year's Tennessee Vols game-by-game prediction, this video is brought to you by, no, not Coke. This video is brought to you by 1998. And next year's video will be brought to you by 1998 as well, because Tennessee's not winning the national championship this season. That's not a very bold prediction, I know. But anyway, we're going to get into the team breakdown and the game-by-game prediction. If you're a member over on Uncle Lou's Patreon page, make sure you head over there. You will see a pinned post at the top of the page about these prediction videos. Make sure you leave a comment under that post letting me know which team it is you want me to do a game-by-game prediction for. Every day when I sit down to do these prediction videos, that's where I go, to Patreon page, and I pick a team off of that list. If you're not on the Uncle Lou Patreon page, what are you doing? Fix that problem now. The link is in the description of the video. It'll take you over there. You can have yourself a look around. And if you sign up right now, it's 50% off. There is a promo code. It's scrolling across the bottom of the screen. It's CFB25, CFB25. Promo code on the Uncle Lou Patreon page. Get yourself 50% off. All right, let's get into it with Tennessee. Like I mentioned, they went 10-2 last year, had a pretty good season. Disappointing loss on the road at Arkansas, no question about it. Arkansas was not a very good team. Tennessee, a much better team. But Tennessee's struggles on the road under Josh Heupel are very well documented over his 3 or 4 years now that he's been at Tennessee. Almost every single year they have a head-scratching loss on the road, or multiple head-scratching losses on the road. Now they have, of course, beat Bama a couple of times in the last 3 years, which is huge for Tennessee, but both of those wins against Bama came at home. They've yet to beat Bama on the road. Florida, they lost to Florida on the road a couple of years ago, one of the worst Florida teams in a long, long time. Last year, the loss to Arkansas. They need to get that kind of turned around. When you lose one of those types of games like that just you have no business losing, it really makes it hard to get where you want to go in terms of the regular season in the SEC championship game, because you're sort of putting yourself behind the 8 ball by losing to an Arkansas or a bad Florida team. It puts you in a spot where you then have to beat the Georgias and the Bamas both, probably, in order to get to Atlanta for the SEC championship game, a place where Tennessee has not been since 2007. Is that right? I believe that was the last time Tennessee played for the SEC championship. Can they do it in 2025? Well, we're going to find out. Now, the most notable thing that has happened to Tennessee in the offseason, of course, was the loss of quarterback Nico. I'm about to leave you. Turns out he did leave you. He wasn't about to. He actually did. Contract dispute, I guess we can call it, an NIL dispute. We've been over this. We spent countless hours talking about it. I'm not going to dive into it here. Nico sort of held Tennessee hostage for more money. Tennessee and Josh Heupel said no. Nico left. He's at UCLA. Everybody applauds sort of Tennessee for kind of taking a stand there, but the reality is they are a worse team today than they were before they lost Nico. They don't have any experienced QBs currently on their roster. They went to the portal and brought in a group of 5 quarterback in Joey Aguilar, who I honestly am not convinced he's an SEC caliber quarterback. He's got a massive turnover problem. And hasn't been great. They've got a couple of young guys on the roster that they recruited and signed who have some potential, have some ceilings, I guess, that they've yet to hit because they haven't played a whole lot. And we'll see which direction Tennessee goes in terms of the quarterback situation. Do you go with the more experienced guy in Joey Aguilar? It's group of 5 experience, but it's experienced nonetheless, who probably has a lower ceiling than the younger guys, probably also has a higher floor though. Or do you go with the young guys? Do you kind of roll the dice with some of the talented, inexperienced young quarterbacks on the roster? We'll find that out as the season starts. But it doesn't end there in terms of the question marks or the losses for Tennessee from last year headed forward into this year. They were primarily a running team last year. Nico didn't have a great year. He played okay. Didn't have a great year. Tennessee's success offensively was fueled by Dylan Sampson. He led the SEC in rushing. He had about 1,500 yards rushing and 22 touchdowns. He's gone off to the NFL. They lose 3 offensive linemen off of last year's team, and they lose their top 3 wide receivers. 2 of them they lost. They ran out of eligibility. The third one has transferred. So they're going to have multiple new offensive linemen, all new wide receivers, a new running back, and a new quarterback. I would be surprised if Tennessee was as efficient offensively in 2025 as they were in 2024. Doesn't mean they'll fall off a cliff. I don't think Tennessee is in a position sort of where they were 8 or 9 years ago, where they just have no way at all of replacing people that they lose. I don't think we're looking at a situation here where Tennessee is set to go back to winning 4 or 5 or 6 games a year. I would be shocked if that happened. I do expect a step back, though, for Tennessee, both offensively and probably overall in terms of a record. Now, defensively, they lose James Pierce off the other side of the ball, arguably their best defensive player last year. He's off to the NFL. And I just don't think they have anything that can replace what they got from him. Now, they return a lot of pieces defensively as well, and they played pretty good defense. Tennessee ran the ball, sort of ground game, control the ball, play good defense, and they won a lot of games. 10-2, like I mentioned before, losing to Ohio State in the playoffs. I just don't know if they've got the pieces right now. I mean, you got to think that the season ended in January. They went through the entire offseason and all of spring practice sort of preparing for Nico to take the next step forward in year 2 as a starter. And then the day before the spring game, it all implodes. He leaves. Just a messy situation there. A lot of pieces to replace. The coaching staff is mostly intact. And of course, when we take a look at the schedule here, we're going to have to try to navigate some difficult road games for Tennessee and see what potentially they can do. But let's put the schedule up. Well, the schedule's already up. Let's go through it game by game. I'm going to give you a winner and a loser for every single week. All right, Tennessee starts off with an interesting game this year, a neutral site game in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Saturday, August 30th. Their week 1 game against Syracuse, an ACC opponent. Syracuse had a really good year last year, too, under first-year head coach Fran Brown. They went 9-3 in the regular season, sort of quietly went 9-3 in the regular season. Didn't get not a lot of people talked about them, not really until, of course, the end of the year, last couple of weeks of the season, where they knocked off Miami, which ended up keeping Miami out of the ACC championship game and out of the playoffs. So a huge win for Fran Brown in year 1 there at Syracuse. But like Tennessee, they are missing a lot off of last year's team. The quarterback, Kyle McCord, the Ohio State quarterbacks. Kyle McCord off to the NFL. Where he'll probably ride the bench for the entirety of his career. And they also lost their leading wide receiver from last year to the transfer portal. He tried to pull a Nico up at Syracuse. He basically strolled into the office up there and told Fran Brown, he said, hey, I want more money and I want input into the play calling. I want to be throwing the ball at this amount of times a game and all this kind of stuff. And Fran Brown just looked at him like he was retarded and told him to get the fuck out, which again, we all respect that move on the parts of these teams that are doing that, sort of drawing a line in the sand with these players and just refusing to be held hostage. But the reality is, Syracuse is a worse team without that wide receiver than they would have been with him. And it's just a fact. Having one good year, it's impressive. 9-3 in his first year there. It's hard for me to put a lot of kind of future faith in a team that has had sort of one pop year. Doesn't mean they can't do it again, but we see a lot of times teams who sort of aren't great, sort of hover around, the 6 to 8 win mark, whatever, have like a pop season, and then the following year they kind of regress back to where they were. Again, I'm not saying that is what's going to happen to Syracuse, but it's hard for me to put as much faith in a team like Syracuse repeating what they did last year versus some other team who I've seen kind of do it year after year after year after year. And to a certain degree, that's kind of where Tennessee is at. They've won 9 games or more for 3 seasons in a row. So both of these teams lose key pieces off of last year's team. Which one do I trust more to get sort of closer to where they were last year than not? Probably Tennessee. I'm going to go with Tennessee in this game, although I do think this is an interesting game because Tennessee, whatever quarterback they tried out there, is going to be a first-time starter at Tennessee, whether it's Joey Aguilar or one of the young kids that they've signed and recruited. And we've seen even experienced offenses and experienced quarterbacks struggle early in the year. So we'll see how this plays out. Both teams have new quarterbacks this year, but I do expect Tennessee defensively to be able to do enough to win this game against Syracuse. I think Tennessee starts with a win against Syracuse. They're 1-0. Week 2 against ETSU, East Tennessee. I mean, this is almost a name your score game. Tennessee lives for these types of games. If you go back to last season, the first 3 or 4 weeks of the year, Tennessee played a bunch of terrible teams, including NC State, and they just ran the score up on them, 40, 50, 60 points a game. And, you know, the Tennessee fans were drooling all over themselves about how great their offense was. Then, of course, the conference schedule started, and they could barely get a first down in a lot of cases. So I wouldn't be surprised for confidence reasons, experience reasons, if Tennessee, you know, put up half 100 on ETSU. But regardless, they'll win that game easily. I've got Tennessee at 2-0. Then it gets real. Georgia comes to town. They go to Knoxville. Tennessee hosts Georgia in week 3. Now, Georgia's also going to have basically a first-year starting quarterback in Gunnar Stockton. Carson Beck, of course, declared for the NFL draft at the end of the season, then changed his mind and entered the portal and landed at Miami. By then, it was too late. Georgia had taken Carson Beck's NIL money and spent it on a couple of wide receivers out of the portal. They didn't have the money for Carson Beck, so he ends up at Miami. Gunnar Stockton will get to start for Georgia at quarterback. Now, he started Georgia's playoff game against Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl, a game where Georgia lost and struggled really to do anything offensively. I don't know how much of that was Gunnar Stockton's fault. He 220, 230 yards passing, over 50% completion, no interceptions. He did have one critical fumble where he was blindsided, but I didn't think he played great. But to get your first start against Notre Dame, a team that we now know was good enough to make it all the way to the national championship game, in a playoff scenario like that, not easy to do. He's now had a whole offseason to sort of get his feet up underneath him, and he'll be running the offense this year. Georgia loses some pieces too. Some come back, some are gone. All new offensive line for Georgia, all new wide receiver crew for Georgia, which is great news. They had one of the worst wide receiver groups in the country last year. They had 3 of the top 10 wide receivers in the country in terms of drop passes, so it's kind of good riddance to that. Cleaned up in the portal with Noah Thomas and Zachariah Branch. It's going to come down to the offensive line for Georgia offensively this year and in this game against Tennessee's defensive front. Georgia's offensive line did not play well last year. A lot of talented pieces on that line, as we saw bear out in the NFL draft, but for whatever reason, they just couldn't come together as a unit, did not play well. They're going to have to play good in this one on the road at Tennessee. This will be Gunnar Stockton's first ever road start. He had the neutral site game in the playoffs against Notre Dame. Georgia will have a couple of home games leading up to this Tennessee game. This is an interesting game. I feel like this is not bucket list item, but if you made a list of things as a Tennessee fan that I need Josh Heupel to do these things, right? I need him to start beating Alabama every once in a while. Check. Need him to beat Florida every once in a while. Check. Make the playoffs, make a New Year's Six game, all that. Check. Couple of things he's yet to sort of check off the list. No SEC championship game appearances yet for Josh Heupel, and no wins over Georgia yet for Josh Heupel. In the sort of battle of defensive head coach versus offensive head coach, Kirby Smart versus Josh Heupel, Kirby Smart has dominated this series over Josh Heupel. Tennessee offensively has been anemic in every game they've played against Georgia since Josh Heupel got the job there. They're going to have to find some kind of offense against the Georgia defense if they want to win this game, even though it is at home. And Tennessee does have a great home field environment. There's no doubt about it. There's no question about it. But Georgia seems to have solved that riddle. They haven't lost. I don't even remember the last time they lost in Knoxville. 2015, I guess. because they haven't lost to Tennessee at all since 2016, and that game was in Athens. Anyway, it's been about a decade since they've lost a game in Knoxville. I've got to see Tennessee beat Georgia before I can predict it to happen. I think Georgia goes into Knoxville and gets what would be a huge win for Georgia, because Georgia's next game after the Tennessee game, they host Bama. And Bama just absolutely own everything I said about Georgia kind of owning Josh Heupel. You can say the same thing about Bama owning Kirby Smart. So if Georgia were to lose this game on the road at Tennessee and then have to host Bama the next week, the pressure that would be on Kirby and that team to beat Bama, which has been their Achilles heel, would be immense. Georgia could be looking at a situation where they could have 2 losses in the month of September if they lose this Tennessee game. I think Georgia gets a close win on the road. Tennessee is 2-1. They stay at home, Tennessee does, to host UAB. Again, sort of a name your score game. I think Tennessee will win that one easily. On the road at Mississippi State. Now, Tennessee's way better than Mississippi State. They'll be favored by probably 3 touchdowns in this game. Mississippi State's one of the worst teams in the SEC lately. But Tennessee's got to take this game seriously, because Arkansas wasn't any good last year either. They went on the road and they lost. Now, I'm picking Tennessee to win this one on the road at Mississippi State, and they absolutely have to. They're a much better team, even without Nico, without last year's wide receivers, even with a new offensive line. They are miles ahead as a program compared to where Mississippi State is right now in my mind. And they cannot let sort of the on-the-road boogeyman catch them in a game like this against Mississippi State, which should be as close to a guaranteed win in the SEC as you're going to get. I think Tennessee does go on the road and get the win. They're sitting with just the 1 loss heading into their first bye week on October 4th. Come out of the bye week and they get a revenge game against Arkansas at home. Tennessee, a pretty good team at home versus on the road. I don't expect Arkansas to be very good. In fact, this could be Sam Pittman's last year there. They may be looking to change directions. There just doesn't seem to be. I don't know what Arkansas does well. They don't recruit well. They don't have a great offense. They don't have a great defense. It's hard to even talk about Arkansas. There's nothing exciting going on there. They seem like they desperately need a change. And I like Sam Pittman just like everybody else does, but this is a bottom line business, and the bottom line is he ain't winning enough games. I think Tennessee gets an easy win at home over Arkansas. Then a couple of tough ones here, back-to-back games on the road. The first one at Bama, the second one at Kentucky. Talked about Tennessee's struggles on the road. They're not winning both of these games. Now, I think they're going to lose on the road at Bama. I think Bama's going to be pretty good this year. I actually think they're going to be better offensively this year than they were last year. I think Jalen Hurts. Jalen Milroe was a liability, I think, offensively. I just don't think he was I don't think he played the position of quarterback particularly well. He's an amazing athlete, and when he gets loose, he can run and no one can catch him, and he can run people over, and he's got moves and stiff arms and jukes and spins and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to just like, quarterbacking 101, sort of just running the offense, recognizing things like coverages and blitzes and fronts and things, I just don't think he did that very well. He had happy feet sometimes, and he didn't seem to me to sort of fit DeBoer's philosophy and what he wants to do offensively. So I don't know, and I'm not saying that Alabama's quarterback situation this year will be better than last year's Jalen Milroe numbers or whatever over the course of a season, but I do think overall they'll be better offensively. They also bring Ryan Grubb back in as OC. I say they bring him back in. DeBoer brings him back in. That was DeBoer's OC at Washington. He was not the OC last year in DeBoer's first year at Bama. But on the road, I can't take Tennessee to win this one. They have a hard time beating average to below average teams on the road. I don't see them going into Bryant Denny and getting a win. So I've got to give Tennessee their second loss here on the road at Bama. Now, at Kentucky, you're a better team than Kentucky. Even in Tennessee's down years, they seem to beat Kentucky. And for that reason, I'm going to give Tennessee this win on the road at Kentucky. But I'm telling you, I've gone back and forth for about an hour before I actually hit record on this video. I came about this close to picking Tennessee to lose this game at Kentucky. And the reason is it comes after that Alabama game, which is a rivalry game. It could be a demoralizing loss. You got to turn around and make a second straight road trip, this time to Kentucky. And while Kentucky's not great, they did beat Ole Miss last year. They nearly beat Georgia last year. So, they have a lot of close calls, even though they're not a great team. Tennessee's dominance over Kentucky, even in Tennessee's down years, is what is sort of pushing me to the Tennessee, to a win for Tennessee when it comes to this game. But I think this is a trap game and an extremely dangerous game that comes in a very tricky spot on the schedule for Tennessee, because you look what comes next. It's a home game against Oklahoma. So Kentucky game is kind of sandwiched between this Alabama and Oklahoma game. And I think Oklahoma gets the win this year on the road in Knoxville. Now, I'm not that high on Oklahoma overall in terms of what their final record might be, but I do think they're talented enough to where if John Mateer can just be 25 to 30% improvement over what they had at the quarterback position last year, and I think he can, I think Oklahoma will win a couple of games that maybe right now, when you look at it, you go, they can't win that game. They can't win on the road in Knoxville. I think the offense is going to be a lot better. They were ate up with injuries last year at the wide receiver position, and they just had an absolute nightmare scenario unfold at the quarterback position with Jackson Arnold and the turnovers that he had. They're a talented team. They're really good defensively. And back-to-back road games against two of the most physical teams in the SEC here in Alabama and Kentucky. And then in comes a Brent Venables Oklahoma squad that's going to be looking for some revenge after last year's home loss to Tennessee. And I think they get it. I think Oklahoma wins this game on the road in Neyland. That's Tennessee's third loss. They've got losses now to Georgia, Bama, and Oklahoma. Then they get their second bye week on November 8th before hosting New Mexico State, another name your score game. I think Tennessee wins that easily. And then they play at Florida and home against Vanderbilt to close out the regular season. I think Florida beats you too. I don't think Billy Napier should still be the coach of Florida. I think he's terrible. I think he doesn't know what he's doing. But Lagway's better than any quarterback on your roster right now since you lost Nico, and we saw what he can do when he's healthy. Now, and that's if he's healthy. This game comes late in the season. Just like Tennessee, Florida will have played 10 games by this point, and I don't want anybody to ever get injured. And I hope Lagway doesn't get injured at any point this season. As much as I hate Florida, he is fun to watch when he's healthy. But I do not think that this version of Tennessee that we're about to see in 2025 can go on the road where they struggle against almost anybody they play into the swamp, which is one of the most difficult places to play in the SEC, in a rivalry game situation with a first-year starter at quarterback, and get a win over DJ Lagway. And because you can't predict injury, and nor would I want to, again, I don't want or wish injury on anybody, but we can't ignore the fact that DJ Lagway has been extremely injury-prone in his short time at Florida. But if DJ Lagway is healthy in this game, I think Florida gets the win at home over Tennessee, and that would be Tennessee's fourth loss. I think they finish up the regular season with a win against Vanderbilt, who I don't expect to be very good this year, despite the fact that Diego Poverty's in his 12th or 13th year of eligibility after winning a pointless lawsuit against the NCAA. The reality is Vanderbilt wasn't any good last year either. They had a miraculous win against Alabama in a weird year for Bama, where they lost to two teams with losing records inexplicably. Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. And so, not to take anything away from that win for Vandy, it was a huge win for Vandy and Clark Lee and quarterback Diego Poverty. But they weren't very good to finish the season. And I don't think they're going to be very good in 2025. I think Tennessee will handle their sort of little in-state brother Vandy relatively easily there to close out the season. And there you have it. For 2025, I've got Tennessee at 8-4. A little disappointing based on the results from the last couple of years, but they were kind of dealt a dud hand with Nico when he up and left on the last day of spring. There was no great answers available in the transfer portal, and that leaves Tennessee in a situation where they are either going to have to start a group of 5 transfer quarterback in Joey Aguilar, who's thrown 1 million interceptions, or a first or second year player at quarterback with next to no experience at all. Combine that with the fact that they lose their best player on offense last year, running back Dylan Sampson, who led the SEC in rushing with 1,500 yards and 22 touchdowns. He's gone. All 3 of Tennessee's starting wide receivers last year, gone. 3 of the offensive linemen from last year, gone. I just don't think, as good as Josh Heupel is offensively, I don't think Tennessee is going to have enough weapons on offense this year to repeat the success that they've had over the last couple of years. So I do think this is a take a step back year for Tennessee at 8-4. That's the bad news. The good news is 7-8 years ago, a take a step back year for Tennessee was a 4 or 5 win season. They're way beyond that right now. They're in a much better spot as a program than they were at that time. And, I wouldn't be surprised in 2026 if we see Tennessee back to the sort of 9, 10, 11 win territory and competing for a playoff spot. But I don't see it in 2025. I saw it last year. I predicted it last year. I thought Tennessee was going to be a really good team last year. I predicted Tennessee to go 10-2 in the regular season and make the playoffs. They went 10-2 and made the playoffs. I don't see it this year. I've got them at 8-4 with losses at home to Georgia, on the road at Bama, home to Oklahoma, and on the road at Florida. Tennessee 8-4 in 2025. Appreciate you watching. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you're new. Have a good morning.